Welcome to a place where gravity seems to work a little differently. We are in Grindelwald, Switzerland. It is often called the Glacier Village, and looking around, it is not hard to see why. This isn't just a postcard, it is the beating heart of the Bernese Oberland. It is the gateway to the top of Europe, the home of the world's most terrifying rock face, and a playground for adventurers that has been drawing travellers here for over 200 years. Grindelwald sits in the Swiss canton of Bern, in a valley that opens toward the north and rises into the high Alps in front of us. The village itself is around 1034 metres above sea level, which means you get that crisp Alpine air without being at extreme altitude. What makes this place instantly recognisable is the amphitheatre of mountains that surrounds it. From here, you can understand the geography with your eyes. The valley floor is where people live, work, and welcome visitors. Then the slopes climb quickly into forest and pasture. Above that, the terrain hardens into rock, ice, and high ridgelines. And right in front of Grindelwald, you often see three names that travellers remember for the rest of their lives: Eiger, Wetterhorn, and Mettenberg. Together, they form a skyline that is not just beautiful, but iconic, because these mountains helped define the history of mountaineering in the Alps. Grindelwald was mentioned as far back as the 12th century, and by the 19th century it had become a major base for Alpine travel during the era when Europeans began exploring these peaks in a more organised, adventurous way. By 1888, winter tourism was born here. In fact, Grindelwald was the first resort in this region to open its roads for winter sleigh rides. So, whether you are here in July or January, you are walking in the footsteps of the very first tourists who ever owned a pair of skis. It is peaceful now. But this town actually has a pretty intense history. Back in 1892, a massive fire broke out and destroyed over 100 buildings in the village centre. A lot of what you see today was rebuilt after that fire. It was a tragedy, but it also allowed the town to modernise just as tourism was starting to boom in the Alps.
Ja, im Bereich vom...
Ja, aber wenn das Tief gegangen ist,
As we walk, notice how the village is shaped by water. The valley is drained by the Schwarz-Lutzschine, which flows down from the Grindelwald valley, and later joins another branch to form the Lutzschine, continuing toward Lake Breens. This matters because Alpine villages exist where the landscape allows life to hold on. Rivers carve the valley, glaciers and snowmelt feed the streams, and the flat areas become the places where buildings, farms and roads can exist. When you look at the tidy streets and chalets, it is easy to forget that everything here is a negotiation with the terrain. If you hear water at any point in the walk, that is the valley speaking. In places like this, the sound of moving water is almost constant because it is part of the Alpine machine that keeps everything alive. Let us talk about what you are seeing when the view opens up. The face of Eiger is famous in Alpine history, especially its north face, which became one of the most legendary challenges in European climbing. Even if you are not a mountaineer, you can feel why. The wall looks serious, almost like architecture made of rock. For climbers, that wall is legendary. It is often called the Murder Wall because it was considered unclimbable for so long. It wasn't until 1938 that a team finally managed to scale it. Even today, if you have a pair of binoculars and look closely at the rock face, you can sometimes spot climbers trying to make the ascent. It is one of the most dangerous and respected climbs in the world, right there in our backyard. The Wetterhorn is another major peak overlooking the area, and it is one of the mountains that gives Grindelwald that sense of being enclosed by giants. In German, Wetter means weather. Locals used to say that this peak acted like a lightning rod for storms coming into the valley. When clouds gather around the tip of the Wetterhorn, you know a storm is coming. And Mettenberg is part of the nearer massif you often see from the valley, shaping the immediate skyline and adding depth to the view. Grindelwald is overlooked by a whole section of the Bernese Alps, and that natural barrier is part of why the valley feels both protected and dramatic at the same time. It is amazing to think that these mountains are basically the reason tourism exists here. People started coming here in the 1800s just to breathe this air and look at these peaks. So why do people visit Grindelwald? First, for scale. There are places that look beautiful in photos, and then there are places that physically change how you feel when you stand inside them. Grindelwald is one of those. The mountains feel close, the slopes feel steep, the clouds move faster than you expect, and the light changes constantly because the valley walls catch the sun and shadow like a moving theatre. Second, for access. Grindelwald is not just a village to look at. It is a gateway into one of the most famous mountain regions in Switzerland, the Jungfrau region, with trails, cable cars, viewpoints, and high mountain rail connections. And third, for atmosphere. Even when it is busy, there is a specific calm here. You see hikers, climbers, cyclists, families and photographers. But you also see local life deliveries, farms, school routes, and people who live with this scenery every day. That mix of world-class landscape and real village routine is rare. Now let us shift from scenery to experiences, because Grindelwald is famous not only for views, but for what it lets you do. One of the most popular mountain excursions from the village is Grindelwald First, which sits high above the valley and is known for big views and adventure activities. It reaches about 2166 meters, so you feel the elevation change quickly. Up there, you can do the first cliff walk, which is essentially a dramatic walkway clinging to the rock, designed to make you feel the exposure safely. If you want adrenaline, they have the first flyer where you zip line down the mountain at 80 kilometers per hour. Or you can rent trotty bikes, heavy-duty scooters, and ride them all the way back down to the village. From the first area, many visitors hike to Bergschalpsee, an alpine lake that becomes a mirror on calm days, reflecting the peaks and sky. Or walk down to the Glacier Canyon just outside of town. It is a deep gorge carved by the glacier where the water rushes through with incredible power. They even have a spider web net you can crawl on over the rushing water. If you want that once-in-a-lifetime high mountain experience, a famous trip from the area is to Jungfraujoch, often marketed as the top of Europe, reached via mountain rail and lift connections. Modern connections from Grindelwald include the Eiger Express, which links the terminal area up toward Eiger Gletscher, where you can continue on the Jungfrau Railway toward the higher stations and viewpoints.
wenn es geregnet ist, wenn er rum ist, das ist ja was eine Sache.
Was warst du?
Dann kommen sie mit dem Gar manchmal.
Nee, ik hou mee sowieso allemaal niet
As we arrive at the church in Grindelwald, you can feel how it anchors the whole valley. The bright white walls and the tall spire stand out against the green slopes and the dark rock of the mountains, almost like a quiet compass point for the village. This spot has been a place of worship for centuries, long before Grindelwald became famous for tourism, and the church you see today was built in the late 18th century, carrying pieces of older history into a newer form. If you hear the bells, notice how the sound travels. It does not just fill the street. It bounces off the valley walls and fades into the Alps. And if we step closer, this is also a good moment to slow down, breathe, and appreciate a different side of Grindelwald. Not adrenaline, not big viewpoints, just calm, community, and time moving at mountain pace.
or whatever on the side, so I'm going to check that out.
As we move through the streets, focus on the details that make Swiss Alpine villages feel so distinctive. Look at the chalets and the timberwork. Many buildings are designed for heavy snow and changing weather, with deep roofs and balconies that can hold flower boxes in summer. You will often see wood stacked neatly because in mountain regions, heat and preparation are traditions, not trends. Notice the way tourism and tradition overlap. In one direction, you have hotels, restaurants, and sports shops. In another direction, you have pasture land and barns. This is what makes Grindelwald different from a purpose-built resort. It is a working landscape that became world famous, rather than a world famous place that was built from nothing. The village is stunning, but the backdrop is the main character. When clouds wrap around the peaks, it feels dramatic. When the sky clears, it feels almost unreal. Grindelwald is a completely different world depending on when you visit. Right now, it is a hiker's paradise. There are 300 kilometers of walking trails. But in winter, this entire green valley turns white. It is famous for sledding. They have the longest sled run in the Alps here, called the Big Pinten Fritz. It is 15 kilometers of pure sledding downhill. In warmer months, hiking is the headline. You have everything from gentle valley walks to steep mountain routes. You also have biking, photography spots, and family-friendly excursions. If you like adrenaline, the Valley River system offers whitewater experiences. The Lutzgene is known for rafting with sustained rapids, and trips often start below the Eiger area before running down toward the Interlaken side of the valley. In winter, Grindelwald turns into a snow sports hub. Skiing and snowboarding are obvious, but do not overlook winter walking. There are days when the village feels quieter, the air is sharper, and the mountains look even more sculpted. The same landscape becomes a completely different movie. Winter Grindelwald is about sound reduction, snow absorbs noise, and that silence is part of the experience. Here are a few things that help viewers understand what they are watching. Grindelwald is a tourism village, but it is also a place where people live year-round. That is why you see a mix of languages, seasonal workers, and a rhythm that shifts between high season and quieter weeks. If you are visiting, one of the best strategies is to treat Grindelwald as a base. Spend part of your time in the village itself, enjoying the atmosphere, then choose one major mountain excursion per day. When you try to do everything in a single day, you lose the magic, because the magic here is the pace. Also, watch the weather. In the Alps, clouds can wrap the peaks quickly and then open again like curtains. Sometimes the best views come right after a short change in conditions. Even if you never climb a peak, you can sense how Grindelwald connects to the mountains through passes and routes. Nearby are famous mountain crossings like Klein Scheidegg and Gross Scheidegg, which are part of how people move through the landscape on foot, by rail, or by mountain road, depending on the route. There is also Pieffingsteg, another well-known local excursion area above the village that people use for viewpoints and short adventures. When you understand that this valley is threaded with routes like these, the village becomes more than a pretty place. It becomes a living trailhead with paths that lead into high terrain in almost every direction. As we finish up our walk through Grindelwald, I hope you enjoyed this little escape to the Alps. It is a place that really reminds you how small we are compared to nature. The fresh air, the sound of the cowbells, the shadow of the Eiger. It is something you have to experience yourself one day. Thank you so much for walking with me. If you enjoyed this tour, please leave a like and subscribe for more walks around the world. I will see you in the next location. Bye for now.